I have been asked how you became the Zoom guru that you are today. I think the person asking was wanting to make sure that none of the characteristics were latent in their children so that they might grow up and not become geeky. Of course, I have to quote Bill Gates here. Do you know what you call a nerd when he grows up? Boss, to quote Bill Gates. But I can look back into my childhood and point to some of those early moments when you might be a Zoom guru if in fourth grade you got invited to be a member of the school safety patrol and could wear that badge across it and hold a stop sign as kids cross the street. Yes, I was one. But another storyteller already tells that story. So maybe we need to move on to middle school when I befriended the school librarian by hanging out in the library a little too much. She invited me to join an almost secret society that was housed in the back of the library behind the glass partitions behind the checkout desk. She said, Wallace, would you like to join the AV Association, the AV Club? I said, what? Do you think I should? She said, yes, audio visuals are the way of the future. Everybody needs to know how to operate a 16 millimeter Bell and Howell projector, or to be able to change a slide tray in the midst of the principal's presentation without missing a slide, or to be able to go into the office and give the announcements for the day. Good morning, students. This is your announcements for Monday. Today, the school cafeteria will be serving peas and carrots along with mystery meat. Please have your lunch card ready to be punched. Yes, I rose to that occasion. And by the time I was in the seventh, or was it the eighth grade, the guy from the district's technology department had singled me out. He said, it's my responsibility to do stage lighting and sound all across the campuses of the district and at the community theater. And we need a few good men just like you. And the next thing I knew, I was a budding technical director. I could operate the lighting console. I could slide the sliders on the soundboard. I was moving along. By the time I was in the middle of high school, I got gigs. I got paid to go light things. I got out of school with my official pass to go and light the diabetic board production of The King and I. I was invited to be the light man for the Miss Hart concept, beauty con. Well, I'm not sure whether you can call it beauty or not. The Miss Hart contest. You see, it was the one pageant where the amount of money you raised, the fundraising you did for the Heart Association, determined the winner. The girls' dads could kick in a chunk, and even the most awkward young lady could win the prize. But our tech crew had a deal. We could sell the quality of lighting that you would receive to the young ladies' fathers. We would demonstrate in an early rehearsal the puke green fall spot, or the fact that the stage lights could accidentally go out in the middle of your song, or that there could be crackling and popping in the pre-recorded music. and that for a fee, we could ensure that those things didn't happen to your daughter. We could move it up in categories until you stepped it up to prom queen level with the finest pinks, shadows, with the right glow as you walk down the catwalk. You just had to come to contribute to our heart fund till. I have a secret to tell you. If they'd have let us compete, we always raised more money for the Miss Hart contest than anybody else. But then I got the ultimate gig for a 17-year-old. No, it wasn't the Community Concert Association I'd had that gig. It was lighting the Miss Aiken pageant. Now, Aiken was known for the number of Miss South Carolinas it had produced. And I was going to be there in the midst of them all. My 17-year-old heart just pounded out of my chest as I got to see things that I had never seen before. I got to demonstrate that I could light a beauty queen. Now, in the high school auditorium in those days, there were no catwalks to get up to the lights. There was a giant, the biggest A-frame ladder that I had ever seen, and you had to weave it in amongst the rows of seats. And when you did, the ladder reached halfway to the heavens, to that bar up at the ceiling where the spots hung. The one you had to throw the rope over so you could shimmy the new light up if you needed to. But you were only halfway there until you extended another run, the longest straight run of ladder you have ever seen. And when it got to the very last hook, you hooked it on and you climbed that ladder and it swayed back and forth like you were a circus performer. When you got to the top, you had to clip yourself in case the ladder fell out below you. And then you could pull the rope to raise the spotter, and you could fasten it by the C-clamp and the wire that had to go over it to hold it in case it fell. And then you could plug it in to the high voltage electricity. I did all those things. I slid it a few feet over and I climbed that ladder again. I was up and down it until every single light was properly adjusted. The gel was put in so that the young ladies looked beautiful. The young ladies who didn't even know my name. But that was about to change. You see, in the dress rehearsal, I slid down the ladder, I climbed down, and I stepped onto the floor. And as I stepped onto the floor, I dislocated my kneecap. There are folks out there to this day that think I fell from the ladder, but I just fell to the floor, flat on my back in excruciating pain. I didn't realize then that that was indeed the perfect plan for a red-blooded 17-year-old. You see, I was going to be recognized by the chosen young ladies for the first time in my life. The queen, the reigning Miss Aiken, who had gone on and become Miss South Carolina, was there. And she came to my aid. She rested my head in her lap, and the other young ladies gathered around me. The ambulance was called, and I didn't want to leave. They forced me to go. The ambulance driver in the ambulance asked me with the radio open what he had to do to go down and get that job. My pastor whose son worked in an ambulance, heard the conversation and let my parents know that I was on the way to the hospital, but I was all right. The doctor slipped me a Valium when they put me up on the table and straightened my leg out, put everything back into place. I was floating so high when it was time to come off the table. They wanted to lift me up and put me in a wheelchair, but I insisted on walking. With one parent on either side, they got me to the car and they got me home and into bed where I crashed and I dreamed of beauty queens the entire night. The next morning, after one of those acetaminophen things that the doctor had given me, I was up and on my splint. I had to be back down to the theater because I wasn't turning over my job to the ambulance driver, who I was sure was going to be right there ahead of me. I got there and they said, "We're so glad to see you. We haven't been able to find anybody to replace you." And yes, every young lady looked at me. Every one of them knew Wallace's name. Every one of them knew I was the one that was going to shed a beautiful light on them that night. Every one of them knew when they sang their song, I was the guy that made it sound good. Every one. I was in heaven. It wasn't the football player that was going to get the girl this time. And yes, by the time the spring rolled around, I took one of the prom queens as my date. And it's all because in middle school, I had an AV club badge. It went on from there. I ended up being a computer guy and then a Zoom guru. So maybe young ladies out there, you should pay more attention to the tech guy behind the scenes.